People think workplace revenge happens with shouting matches or dramatic resignations. They're wrong. The best corporate revenge happens quietly. One careless sentence, one bad decision, one arrogant executive who forgets that every person in an office deserves respect. My boss learned that lesson the day he laughed at me for helping an old janitor. By lunchtime, his career was over. I worked at Henderson Global Logistics, one of those giant corporate companies where everyone wore expensive suits, spoke in buzzwords, and treated office politics like an Olympic sport. On paper, I was just another senior account manager. In reality, I kept the company's biggest clients from leaving every single week. Whenever a customer threatened to cancel a contract, I fixed it. Whenever another department made a $1 million mistake, I cleaned it up. And whenever senior management celebrated another successful quarter, my boss accepted the applause. His name was Julian Vance, Regional Vice President, corner office, luxury watches, custom suits. The kind of executive who believed kindness was a weakness, and employees were nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Everyone feared Julian. Managers feared him. HR avoided him. Even directors lowered their voices when he walked through the office. His favorite phrase was simple: feelings don't generate revenue. He repeated it so often that people joked it should be printed on the company's annual report. I laughed along, mostly because I couldn't afford not to. My mother's medical treatments depended on my bonuses. Quitting wasn't an option. So I swallowed my pride, ignored the toxic workplace culture, and focused on doing my job. That changed on a Tuesday night. The office was nearly empty. It was after 8. Rows of cubicles sat dark except for the glow of computer monitors. I was still working through a major logistics crisis involving one of our largest corporate clients when I heard glass shatter somewhere near the executive hallway. At first, I ignored it. Then came another sound, a painful groan. I rushed toward the noise. Arthur lay on the polished marble floor beside his cleaning cart. His mop bucket had tipped over. Broken glass was scattered everywhere. The old man's hands trembled as he tried to clean the mess, despite barely being able to breathe. Arthur had worked the night shift longer than anyone could remember. Everyone knew him. Almost nobody spoke to him. He quietly emptied trash bins, polished conference rooms, and disappeared before the executives arrived every morning. Except whenever I worked late. He always smiled. "Working hard again, David?" Every single night. Now that smile was gone. "Arthur!" I knelt beside him. His face was gray. Sweat covered his forehead. "My chest," he whispered. "It hurts." Training from an old first aid course immediately kicked in. I helped him sit against the wall, called emergency services, loosened his collar, told him to keep breathing. "It's okay," I said. "The ambulance is coming." Arthur looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I made such a mess." I looked around at the broken bottles and spilled water. "Forget the mess. We're worried about you." For the first time that evening, Arthur smiled. The elevator doors opened. Expensive laughter echoed across the hallway. Julian. He walked out with 2 senior managers carrying steakhouse leftovers and talking about quarterly profits. The moment he saw me sitting beside Arthur, his smile disappeared. Then it turned into something worse. Contempt. "David," his voice echoed through the hallway. "What exactly are you doing?" "He's having a medical emergency. I've called an ambulance." Julian didn't even glance at Arthur. Instead, he looked at his Rolex. Then at me. then back at Arthur like he was staring at broken office furniture. "You're telling me," Julian said, loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "that one of my highest paid account managers is spending company time babysitting the cleaning staff?" The two managers laughed. Not because it was funny, because Julian had laughed first. I stood up. "He needs help." "He needs his supervisor," Julian replied, "not one of my revenue producers." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's 70 years old. He can barely breathe. Julian shrugged. "And?" The hallway fell silent. Even the managers stopped smiling. Julian stepped closer until we were only inches apart. "You know why you'll never become management, David?" I didn't answer. "Because successful people understand priorities." He pointed toward Arthur without even looking at him. "That man cleans toilets. You negotiate contracts worth millions. If you can't tell which one deserves your attention," he smiled, "you'll never belong in the executive floor." Arthur lowered his eyes. The humiliation on his face hurt more than Julian's words. I felt my hands clench, but I refused to move. "I'm staying." Julian's expression hardened. "You have exactly 1 minute to get back to your desk." "I'll take the write-up." His eyebrows lifted. "Oh, so we're choosing janitors over our clients now?" "No. I'm choosing a human being." For the first time since I'd known him, Julian actually looked offended. "HR will hear about this." "Good." His face turned red. Without another word, he stepped over Arthur's spilled bucket, deliberately splashing dirty water across the marble floor before disappearing into his office. 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. As paramedics wheeled Arthur away, he reached for my hand. "Thank you," his voice cracked. "You treated me like I mattered." The next morning, HR delivered exactly what Julian had promised: a formal disciplinary notice. Reason: failure to prioritize business responsibilities. I signed it without saying a word, because deep down, I knew I had done the right thing. I just had no idea that 3 weeks later, the biggest corporate deal in our company's history would walk through those same elevator doors, and my toxic boss would discover exactly who Arthur really was. 3 weeks passed. The disciplinary notice stayed in my personnel file. Julian made sure everyone knew it. Whenever executives walked by my desk, he'd casually mention my lack of professionalism. Managers stopped inviting me to strategy meetings. Rumors spread through the office that my promotion had quietly disappeared. That was corporate politics. You weren't always fired. Sometimes they simply made sure you never moved forward. I ignored it. Arthur had survived. That was enough for me. Until the biggest day in company history arrived. Every employee knew about the Omnitrans contract. 5 years, $200 million. Winning it would make Henderson Global the dominant logistics company in North America. Losing it, someone's career would end. Julian spent weeks bragging that this deal would earn him a promotion to Chief Operating Officer. "You'll all remember where you were," he said during our Monday meeting. "This contract changes everything." The boardroom looked more like a luxury hotel than an office. Fresh flowers, imported coffee, leather folders, custom presentations. Every executive wore their most expensive suit. Julian stood proudly beside the conference room doors, rehearsing his handshake for Omnitrans's legendary founder, the man almost nobody had ever met. Employees whispered that he hated publicity. Some claimed he hadn't visited a client in over a decade. At exactly 10 o'clock, the elevator doors opened. 3 executives stepped out first. Everyone immediately stood. Then something unexpected happened. The executives didn't walk forward. Instead, they stepped aside, making room for an older gentleman walking slowly behind them. Perfect charcoal suit, polished shoes, silver hair, calm smile.
I froze. It couldn't be. Arthur. The entire office watched him walk toward the boardroom. Julian confidently approached with his hand already extended. Mr. Pendleton, it's an honor. I'm Julian Vance, Regional Vice President. I've personally led every stage of this acquisition. Arthur never looked at his hand. He walked straight past him. The office became so quiet I could hear the air conditioning. Arthur looked across the room until his eyes landed on me. Then he smiled. Good morning, David. My heart nearly stopped. Good morning, sir. He walked over and shook my hand. A real handshake, warm, respectful. Exactly the way he'd greeted me every night as the janitor. Only now, everyone was watching. Confused whispers spread across the office. Julian finally spoke. Mr. Pendleton. You know him? Arthur slowly turned around. I certainly do. He saved my life. Silence. Complete silence. Arthur faced every executive in the room. I believe introductions are necessary. My name is Arthur Pendleton. I founded Omnitrans 43 years ago. Gasps echoed through the office. One director nearly dropped his coffee. Julian's confident smile vanished. Arthur continued. Before selecting long-term business partners, I spend several weeks working undercover inside their companies. I've cleaned warehouses, driven delivery trucks, worked reception, and here, he looked down at the old janitor badge resting in his pocket. I cleaned your offices. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Arthur's voice became colder. I don't evaluate balance sheets first. I evaluate people. I wanted to know how your employees treated someone they believed had no power. Then he looked directly at Julian, and Mr. Vance gave me my answer.
Julian forced a nervous laugh. There must be some misunderstanding. Arthur ignored him. Instead, he looked toward me. 3 weeks ago, I collapsed in this hallway. There was one employee willing to stop working. One. He pointed at me. David. He called an ambulance. He stayed beside me. He treated me with dignity. Arthur's eyes shifted back to Julian. And you. He took one slow step forward. You called me replaceable. You mocked the man helping me. You said compassion had no place in business. Julian's face had turned completely pale. I didn't know who you were. Arthur nodded. Exactly. You thought I was just a janitor. And that's precisely why this meeting is over. One of Arthur's assistants placed a thick contract on the conference table. The room recognized it instantly. $200 million. Julian stepped forward hopefully. Arthur picked up the contract, held it in both hands. Then slowly, he tore it in half. The sound echoed through the silent boardroom. Another tear, then another. Hundreds of millions of dollars became worthless pieces of paper falling onto the polished floor. Nobody dared speak. Arthur dropped the shredded contract directly in front of Julian's polished shoes. I refuse to do business with a company whose leadership cannot recognize basic human decency. He looked toward Henderson's CEO. If this executive represents your corporate culture, our partnership ends today. The CEO's face went white. He slowly turned toward Julian. Security was already walking down the hallway. Julian looked around desperately. This isn't fair. It was one mistake. Arthur shook his head. No. It was your character. Security reached Julian's side. For the first time in years, nobody obeyed him. Nobody defended him. Nobody even looked him in the eye. He was escorted past every employee he'd spent years humiliating. The office remained completely silent until the elevator doors closed behind him. Arthur smiled at me. David, would you join me for lunch? I blinked. Of course. I'd like to discuss funding your own logistics company. The room exploded into whispers. Arthur laughed softly. I've spent enough time watching you solve problems. I'd rather invest in integrity than arrogance. 6 months later, Henderson Global lost 2 more major clients. Their stock price fell. Their CEO resigned. Julian's LinkedIn profile quietly changed to one simple sentence: open to work. As for me, Arthur became my first investor. Together, we built a boutique logistics company focused on one simple rule: treat every employee with respect. From the CEO to the newest intern, to the person emptying the trash at midnight. Because titles don't reveal character, choices do. And sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the one holding your future in their hands. That's the day I learned the greatest workplace revenge isn't getting even with a toxic boss. It's letting their own arrogance destroy everything they spent years trying to build.